Exactly. I agree with that. I mean, the question is going to be, does it do it? Might be worth modeling if they're serious about going forward with this.
Much better. Are we ready? Good evening and welcome to the October 18, 2022 regular meeting of the Township Board for the Charter Township of Meridian. Would you join me and rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Mr. Lemaster, would you please call the roll?
Supervisor Jackson.
Here.
Clerk Guthrie.
Here.
Treasurer DeShane.
Here.
Trustee Hendrickson.
Here.
Trustee Sundlin. Trustee Wilson.
Here.
Trustee Wazinski. Trustees Sundlin and Wazinski are absent. All others present.
Thank you. We have two presentations. The fourth item on our agenda, two presentations tonight. We will start with item 4B, electronic township payments, to be presented by our treasurer, Mr. Phil DeShane.
Thank you, Madam Supervisor and members of the board, for allowing me a few minutes to give you all an update on where we are with electronic payments here at Meridian Township. I have a PowerPoint slideshow, and you have copies of it in front of you, and you might want to keep the paper copies handy because some of the screens can be a little difficult to read. Okay. In October of 18, just before I became treasurer, a committee selected Invoice Cloud as the vendor for electronic payments. There were 3 or 4 options available, and they picked Invoice Cloud, which at the time was a bit new to the government sector. Since then, they have a very strong foothold. 2 of the 3 committee members are not with the township any longer, and not a reflection on the decision. They just moved on. But one of them is Stephen Geeves. Where's Stephen? Stephen was part of that committee, and I inherited this decision and this choice, and I'm really glad that decision was made. They've been a great partner to work with. So over the past 3 years of Invoice Cloud experience, we have now annually 34,244 annual payments that come in electronically, amounting to almost $17 million. Of those, nearly 4,000 are tax payments, for a total of about $12.4 million. And about 30,000 of those are utility payments, amounting to $4.5 million. what are the costs for our residents or taxpayers to use electronic payment options? There's no charge at all if they pay their taxes or utility bills using an EFT or ACH transaction. There is a small nominal charge. We do not pass that on to our taxpayers or our utility payments. A, because they're already paying a billing charge, and B, we save a great deal of money with electronic payments compared to the cost of processing paper payments or cash payments. So it's actually a bargain for us. For those that want to pay with a credit card, there is a 2.75% charge of the total tax bill if you're using a credit card. Someone calls, we explain that right off the bat, and many people will then decide not to use their credit card, instead to use the EFT. It can get pretty hefty when you're paying a $7,000 tax bill. People think they're going to get some frequent flyer miles on their credit card, but not at that rate. There's a $3.75 charge for utility payments using credit cards. Again, no charge if you're doing the EFT charge payment. So what are the benefits of doing it? Why did we move this direction? Why would our residents want to do it? First of all, it's more convenient. You can make your payment from home. No need to come out and come to town hall for that reason. And in this era of COVID, because this decision was made within a year and a half, we were fully into COVID, and it really worked out well. While the township stayed open, people were not comfortable coming out to make payments. They could then pay them electronically. It's a more efficient payment processing method for our 3 township staff, myself and 2 others in the Treasury Department, because we receive $120 million a year in receipts. That amounts to about $650,000 a day on average. That's a lot of money that's received, and it's much easier to receive an electronic payment than it is to receive a paper check or cash. It's also eco-friendly, less paper to print out and fewer car trips to either come to town hall or even go to the post office. And lastly, it's more accurate. We all may bemoan how cold and impersonal a computer can be, but they get their numbers right every time, so they're very accurate. In terms of 2021, our last full year, if you turn to about your 5th page in your presentation, you'll see these 2 charts that show for 2021 the 34,244 payments, and then the 6 bars next to it. They are auto pay, which is the largest group. Those are people that sign up and schedule their utility or tax payment. Second group is express payments. Those are people that we send an electronic invoice, a paperless invoice for their utility bills. They can click on a link and it takes them right to the payment page. Also, shopping cart for people that may pay their utilities and their taxes in the same transaction on Invoice Cloud. And then customer portal, someone that just logs on, finds their payment invoice due, makes a payment, doesn't register, they just makes that single payment. And then lastly, mobile express, people paying with their mobile phone. In terms of the value of that, you'll see it's $16.9 million, and the express payments actually exceed the auto payment on that category. Year-to-year growth from 20 to 22, since 2020 rather, we've had an 18% increase in the number of payments, and we've had a 32% increase in the value of those payments that are being made. And the numbers for 2023 look even, 2022 look even better. You can see in terms of how they're paying, our auto pay numbers are up. They're 33% from last year, and paperless is at 35%. It's actually dropped down. Paperless allows people who get an electronic reminder to pay, but they're paying on using our electronic payment method, that through Invoice Cloud, that they don't have to get a paper copy of their utility bill. And that was up at 48% last year. It's fallen back this year. We're not sure why. We've asked Invoice Cloud to help us figure that one out. The next screen, you'll see strong growth in invoices received and the total payments made. For the end of last year, we were at 33,435, that earlier number, which was up from 27,000 the year before. In terms of overall adoption of invoices that are sent out, we've gone from 16% in 2019 up to 20% in 2020 and 39% this past year. You can also see other trends in auto pay, paperless, and adoption growth. All of our trends are moving in the right direction. For this year, we're almost at last year's numbers, and we've got 3 more months to go. You can see for total payments, we're already at $27,871, and we've got October, November, December, including which is a full cycle of utility billing payments yet to come in, and we've got the winter taxes that will be due on December 1st. In terms of the total payment value, we're already at nearly $16 million. For all of last year, we were at $16.9 million. So we will exceed both of those numbers by 10 to 20% for this year. So things are looking strong to close out 2022. In terms of the options our residents have to make these payments online, they can do it with a scheduled payment, auto pay, one-time payment, and online bank direct, where they have their bank send a check electronically to us. Mobile, they've got their mobile optimized. They're using either Apple Pay or Google Pay, one pay click, as well as pay by text. We have not implemented the third column there, which is the IVR, which would allow a resident to call up, talk to a live person, and make a payment over the telephone. We can't do that in our office. The new credit card rules simply do not allow that. You've got to use a third party for that. It's thought of as an insecure transaction. We haven't had a lot of demand for it. We get 2 or 3 calls on that maybe a month out of tens of thousands of payments. It's not, we're not really saying, we're not saying no absolutely, but right now the demand isn't very strong for that. Other areas where we can move into would be Venmo, PayPal, PayPal Credit. We're evaluating those right now. They would be like a credit card. They would be that 2.75% fee for residents that want to use those. How difficult is it to sign up for electronic payments? You can see from our main webpage where you go to pay bills, and you'll see this screen here, pay or view bills. You would then select your water bill, your taxes winter, taxes summer. From that, they would then look at their open invoices that may exist out there for taxes or utilities, select that invoice, and move on to the payment screen. That payment screen, and you'll see this as you move further into your handouts, then gives them a drop-down list of payment options. And the top of the list right now is credit card, which certainly for tax is not the preferred way to pay it. And so we're talking to Invoice Cloud now about changing that list. So the first option is the EFT, which is the most economical and the one that anyone paying taxes would want to use. Once they've selected that, over on the right-hand side, the payment summary will show them their payment. And if there is a 2.75% fee, that would show up there on the screen. We do get calls from residents who say, I just paid online, there's a service fee, I didn't expect that. Can you help me? And we can reverse those payments if they call us soon enough. And again, we're getting fewer and fewer of those calls today than we got the first year or two. Your mobile payment screen looks like something like this one here. This one using PayPal, or it could be a credit card. The mobile payment option was really, I believe, Stephen, you can back me up on this, one of the strong things that Invoice Cloud offered that the other companies didn't offer. And the world's changing, and mobile phones are becoming ubiquitous and a preferred payment method for many, many people, and we'll be there ready for them as they move on to it. So the last thing that we got to look at is how are we collecting the other 63% of our payments that don't come in from Invoice Cloud? Well, first of all, mortgage companies do pay electronically with very large payments. For about 40% of our homeowners have escrow payments, and that amounts to 23% of the payments we get there. So that brings us up to about 60% of all payments between Invoice Cloud and mortgage escrow payments. The rest are coming in paper checks, handwritten, or from a bank pay site. They're either delivered to us at the counter or put in our Dropbox or mailed to us. So moving forward, to get into that last 40%, we will continue to do all we can to reach out to our residents to let them know their options here and the fact that it will cost them nothing. Another area that we're working on is to expand the universe of payments we can take, not just tax and utilities. So in the next year, we expect to add at the counter permit payments, delinquent personal property tax payments, ambulance payments, and any other miscellaneous receivable. Also, special assessments, parking tickets, false alarms, code violations, and even retiree health insurance payments. So there's many other payment areas that we want to move into. We really wanted to get a high saturation point with tax and utility, which is really our bread and butter. We've done that. We've got a level of competence now, and now we're going to move into these other areas that will be much easier for our residents to make these payments. Any questions?
Board members, do you have questions?
Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Treasurer DeShane. Item 4A on our agenda is a life-saving award to be presented by our fire chief, Chief Hamill.
Madam Supervisor, Board, thank you. I'm actually not going to present. I just have to say a couple words, and I'm going to let our training chief operations individual, TJ Booms, talk about the situation. I just want to kind of go over a couple real brief things. So we don't have very many of these occasions where we have a life-saving award. I believe we've had 3 this year. 2 people didn't want anything formal. They come to the station, we'll do a dinner, things like that. But what I wanted to remind everybody of is there's 4 links to the chain of survival. Early access, meaning dial 911, and we push that forever, right? Call 911, call 911, it's emergency. Second one is early CPR, which is why we're here tonight for a young lady who actually just learned CPR and started it. And then the next part is your advanced life support, your paramedics, some of which that were there here tonight. The rest had to go out on a call, so they're a little delayed. And then getting to the hospital quickly with good equipment. So thank you for that. Thank you for the staffing. Thank you for our good equipment. Now I'm going to turn it over to TJ so he can talk about what really happened. You guys can come on up over here.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
Right behind you. Come on up.
Here's.
Yes.
So I appreciate the time tonight. I will try not to be too lengthy in explanation. It's pretty exciting circumstance that we're here to kind of celebrate and recognize. One of the greatest rewards that you can get as a first responder is the opportunity to shake the hands of somebody who you had a part in saving. That does not always happen as often as we would like, just because of the nature of the circumstances that we're typically called for. American Heart Association reports that there are over 350,000 cardiac arrests that happen out of hospital annually. That number fluctuates a little bit, but that is what they most recently reported as their website. Around 90% of those cases don't make it. So it's a pretty big thing when we have something like this. Of data reported, some of the data is what we report to a Michigan data collection company, says that 7.7% of people in Michigan that experience an out-of-hospital cardiac arrest, witnessed cardiac arrest, is 7.7% is your survival rate. Here in Meridian Township, we're actually sitting at 9.4%. So and that's due in part to staffing, as the chief mentioned, good equipment and things like that. Tonight, I'm honored to introduce to you our own survivor, Mr. Thomas Kissling. He went into cardiac arrest at his home. I got a little more of the backstory, and he kind of jokingly said that this all started because of him, which is absolutely true. But he went into cardiac arrest in his home. 911 was called. Meridian Township Police and Fire Department both responded, as well as his granddaughter. The following team members were there that day and were able to make a difference for him. Unfortunately, some of them are out dealing with the remnants of a structure fire, so we're unable to recognize all of them. But if you would like to come up, the chief will hand you the certificates. I'll read off of their names. There are several Meridian Township police officers on scene. They were unable to make it here tonight. Nate Lafayette, who is not, he's out on a call currently. Amanda Arnett, who is also on a call. Captain Chris Johnson, Battalion Chief Mark Vroman, and then we have 2 individuals here with us that were, I believe, the first ambulance to arrive at the home. And that's Lieutenant Jeff Romick, Firefighter Ben Haviland, And so those are two of the members of that crew that was there that day. And that's what it takes to produce an outcome like this, is to have all of those things line up for that success to happen. I'd like to talk for just a minute about heroes. If you ask most police, fire personnel, they'll probably never tell you that they're heroes. And I think Christopher Reeve, Superman himself, defines a hero as this: an ordinary individual who finds the strength to persevere and endure in spite of overwhelming obstacles. It takes great strength to step in and help a complete stranger, but it takes even more strength and courage to compose yourself and help a family member. Mr. Kisling's 12-year-old granddaughter did just that. She just recently completed CPR training so she could do a babysitting job. And she was at his house that evening when he collapsed on the kitchen table and then to the ground. Grandma called 911. Kate stepped in and started doing compressions. And my understanding is her little brother also took care of the dogs and got things kind of organized a little bit away from the scene. So I have to recognize his role in this as well. Her performing CPR, according to AHA, either doubled or tripled his chance of survival because it provided oxygenation that's important to keep all of the cells within the body at a state in which our medics can come and maybe convert a lethal rhythm or do some other interventions to reverse the causes. So while she was doing CPR, she was providing the oxygenation to his body. The ambulance arrived. Without her actions, the outcome could have been much different. And so I'm honored to call Kate up here to receive an award from her grandfather. Say something? Go ahead.
I think that it's very important for everyone to learn CPR and take a class or something because it's very personal to me, and I think that it could, and well, I know that it could save a lot of people.
Thank you.
And now I think Manager Walsh has something to present as well.
First of all, I find it very ironic. We're here tonight, and I see Trustee Scales in the audience. Trustee Scales, this gentleman right here, was saved. He went into arrest in front of his home and was saved by an Amazon driver. Ended up, I think, on the Kelly Clarkson show. So you've got some great things to look forward to. But it's very ironic that you're here tonight. About a year and a half ago, Joyce Vancouvering, a member of our public who serves on a number of our boards. She brought me in something and she gave it to me, and I said, "Oh, thank you, that's really nice." Thought she was giving it to me. And she says, "No, it's not for you. I want you to keep this in your office." So it's been in there for a year and a half. She was just named Volunteer of the Year yesterday, so this is all very ironic. But what she said is, "I want you to wait and give it to the most appropriate person you find in the next couple years." And when I met you tonight, I realized you're it. So I want you to accept this on behalf of the township and Joyce Vancouvering, and you're welcome to open it and show everybody what it is. She made this. It's a Meridian Township pillow. That's for you. So congratulations. Thank you very much. It's an honor to meet you. So, and thank you to your family. I don't know, Supervisor, if you have anything to say. Supervisor Jackson?
Yes, the first thing I'd like to know is, Kate, would you give us your name? I don't think anyone has given us your whole name in this presentation.
Kate Lyon.
Lyon? And I would also like to ask, and where did you get your CPR training?
At the Forest Hills Community Center.
Forest Hills Community Center. Are there other board members who would like to ask Kate questions about her experience?
Maybe introduce your parents.
That would be great. And your little helper as well.
This is Jack.
Congratulations, Jack.
I know it's not appropriate to tell someone's age, but Kate was 12 when all of this happened.
Ah,
So that training came in just in time.
we're all very proud of you and congratulate you and look forward to great things going forward from you. Thank you all.
Thank you for saving. Thank you for saving.
Thank you. At this time, we come to item 5 on our agenda, and that's citizens address agenda items and non-agenda items. Our policy at this point is that there are 2 opportunities for public comment in our regular meeting. Come again.
Thank you.
Citizens who wish to address the agenda or non-agenda items will have an opportunity at the beginning of the meeting as well as another near the end of the meeting. Individuals who wish to address the board must complete a green form, I have one so far, located with the agendas near the room entrance, and present the card to the board secretary prior to the start of public comments. At the appropriate time, the supervisor will call upon individuals who have completed the form. Citizens are required to limit comments to 3 minutes, except when this requirement is waived in advance. A timekeeper will communicate to the individual who is addressing the board at the conclusion of 3 minutes. The board highly values public comment and input. However, the board meeting format is designed to facilitate the evening's agenda and therefore restricts board members from engaging in conversation with speakers or immediately responding to questions. Questions and concerns may be addressed by the board later in the agenda and or may be assigned for follow-up by the board or the township manager at a later date. In order to foster the orderly conduct of the board's business on behalf of the community, please refrain from rude or discourteous behavior. Address all comments to the board, not to individual board members or to others in attendance. And finally, the meeting is a meeting of the Board of the Township held in public for the purpose of conducting the business of the township. It is not a meeting of the public. Please limit comments to the issues on the agenda to the greatest extent possible. At this time, I have one green card from John Cavell.
John Covell, 6156 East Lake Drive, Haslett. I just wonder how many of you all seen the State Journal this morning. There's a rather extensive write-up here about Meridian Township pot shops. And I was here last month voicing my opinion on where to place said pot shop. First of all, my suggestion was 1. According to this article, it kind of broke it down in sections of the township, who approved a pot and who doesn't. And my suggestion was the far northwest corner of the township, where Lake Lansing Road, Tower Road, and Birch Road come together. Well, how about that? According to this article, that was the most popular spot for approval. There's an old strip mall out there with a vacancy, fine. If we have to have a pot shop in this township, put it out there. We don't need it out here on Grand River Avenue or Okemos Road. And apparently these people want it because they approved it by the widest margin. Let them have it then. I don't want it in my neighborhood. it also makes mention where the most resistance to marijuana was in Okemos, or it's a southeast part of the township, which is Okemos. The majority of the board, you reside in Okemos. I don't know your exact address, but just from what I've read in the past, there it is. But didn't the majority of you want marijuana sales in the township? That's what was my understanding, but yet you voted against it. Medical marijuana. There are no actually operating pot shops in the township, according to this. They're all out of business, closed up, or something like that, which makes me think that medical marijuana is just nothing but a bad joke. The only reason people frequent those places was because they didn't have access to just go down to the store and buy a pack. But now that East Lansing's wide open, forget that medical marijuana crap. We don't have to go to the doctor anymore. We can just go across Hagedorn and get as much as we want whenever we want. Last article thing was, it mentions a man that lives up in Traverse City that owns a piece of land here in Meridian Township that wants to open up a marijuana shop in Meridian Township. Why would we want to have, I hate to say foreign, or open up? He has no vested interest in Meridian Township other than a piece of land to make money. But he himself doesn't live here to experience the, well, you know, the negativeness of having a pot shop in the area. I'm just thinking, you know, yeah, I know I'm 7 seconds over. Okay, sorry. But there. So there's my opinions on that. So whatever. I hate to say told you so, but put it up in the northwest corner.
Are there others in the room that would like to speak to the board at this time? Then we will move on to item 6 on our agenda, which is the Township Manager's Report.
Thank you, Madam Supervisor. Prior to giving my report, I'll do the most important part of my presentation tonight, and that is inviting Denisha McDowell up to the podium. Can you please come up, Denisha? So as you know, we've had a vacancy in our communications department, and we just went through a very competitive process after Samantha got promoted to be the manager of the communications department. So filling her role was a task on our part, and we had some great candidates, but the best candidate was Denisha McDowell, who has been an intern with us. I understand a student at Michigan State, or a graduate of Michigan State. But introduce yourself. But we are really thrilled to have Denisha join our team. Would you like to say a couple words to the board and the community? Yeah, please come on up.
To Supervisor Jackson, the board, and the entire Meridian staff, thank you so much for this opportunity. I'm very grateful. It's already been a great year. I received my master's at Michigan State in journalism in June, and then now fulfilling this role. So very excited to start this new chapter. Thank you all so much.
Thank you. Welcome. And welcome.
As you can see, we hire the brightest and best here, and we're very proud to have Denisha part of our team. Volunteer of the Year program, that's something that traditionally the management team has awarded over time. We've not been able to do that the last couple years because of COVID, but we had our meeting just yesterday and nominated unanimously 2 people, and they'll be here on November 1st to be presented their recognition by the supervisor and the board. One of the things that we're looking at is how to improve upon our senior center. How do we enhance what we have? And so one of the things that we're doing is next week, there's a group of us, Supervisor Jackson and Treasurer DeShane, myself, and Director Maisner are going over to Portage, which is near Kalamazoo, and taking a look at their senior center. Just yesterday, a number of us were, I think there were 10 of us here that were honored the Garden Club in this room, and then with their ceremony outside. It was really an honor to take some time and thank the group, and there were probably about 40 or 50 members here, to take the time to thank them for what they do here for Meridian Township. So really good news about the Brightline project. That's the enhancements to our IT system. I'm told some of the switches are here and are going to be installed here shortly, and we'll start to see some improvements. It sounds like a tornado going on out there, but or talk faster. The 242 Church is again asking to do a project with the township, and we vetted a number of ideas. The idea we came up with is perhaps taking a look at our police department's building and painting the inside of that building, which hasn't been done in approximately, I think, 30 years. So we've suggested that idea to them. Our deer cull program is going extremely well. We're off to a good start. As you know, that goes from October 1st. Archery season until approximately the end of the year, and then the beginning of the year, I believe the police department takes over with the firearms. Again, we'll be with a goal of about 300 deer this year. More good news, the building permit has been issued for the Meridian development, the Meridian Retirement Center up in Hazlet. That permit's been issued. As you know, they're going vertical, and we're pleased about that. The development next to that, the 19-acre development, we're going to have to reprocess the CRA. There's been some issues with some ownership, the State Tax Commission. Nothing to be alarmed about, but we'll have to come back and bring that back to the board and revisit that. There's a couple of issues over at the senior center, our senior center here in Meridian Township, with the ingress and egress, the use of the door. We're working with the school district. It really needs to be have attention to it immediately. I know we had issues at our library door today. We've taken care of it. It's done. It's finished. We need that same attention over at the senior center. So we're working on that. The seniors need to be able to come in the door that's ADA compliant and have proper ingress and egress. You know, we're looking at doing for all these things for people in the community. The people who have paid the taxes the longest and have done the most for the community are the people we really need to be thinking about right now. And finally, the supervisor had a good idea of sitting down and meeting with the Okemos Board of Education, and we want to do that with the Hazlet Board of Education as well. Today we set a date for doing that in November with the Okemos Board of Education, and I will get the information to you. That's my report, unless you have any questions.
Questions?
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Welsh. Item 7, board member reports of activities and announcements. Trustee Wilson.
I was a participant at the CRC, the Community Resource Commission, last week, and we did not have a quorum for the second month in a row. So we're going to work on that. And what I do want to report to you is that we have a lot of activity that goes on in this community for emergency services for individuals who just fall on hard times and need a one-time infusion of a rent payment or partial rent payment, utilities payments, bus passes. Those are the sorts of things we focus on. So we'd like our community to know such emergency help is available, and spread the word among people that you know, because we're here to help you. Thank you.
Thank you. Other members of the board. Treasurer DeShane.
Thank you. First of all, I wish to apologize for missing the last meeting. Hadn't missed a meeting in a couple of years, but I think you probably were glad I stayed home, as I was just coming off of COVID. I did attend the Garden Club rededication yesterday as well, which the manager mentioned. It was a rededication of the Blue Star Memorial that's out here that they were given some history on. The previous manager had approved, and it is really a stunning landscape feature that they've done there. And the members of township, past township employees and past Garden Club members who are also veterans that are honored as well were mentioned. It was quite meaningful. Last week, attended the an award for former supervisor Stika, who was given the St. Thomas Aquinas Award by the Catholic Lawyers League of Mid-Michigan. It was a very meaningful award. It's rarely given posthumously, but it was for Ron. And Ron, of course, Ron left us suddenly and too soon, but they wanted to give Ron the award. And I thank the manager for arranging that for several of us, including Trustee Hendrickson, who were there for that event. And it was very meaningful to have that award given to Ron's family. That's my report. Thank you.
All right. Others? Then we'll move on to consent agenda. And the consent agenda are communications, minutes of our September 20 regular meeting, October 4 regular meeting, bills, of course, and a resolution authorizing defense of a former director, and we need to set a special meeting for November 29, 2020. Yes, Mr.
Yes, Supervisor, you need to approve the agenda first.
Right. Oh, I'm sorry, you're right. I missed that. First, we should approve our agenda as written. Trustee Wilson.
Move to approve the consent agenda.
No, the regular agenda.
Oh, I'm sorry.
As Mr. Lemaster has pointed out, we're at item 8 as opposed to item 9.
Move to approve the agenda.
Support.
Supported by Treasurer DeShane. Are there comments? Then we... All in favor of approval of the agenda, please say yes.
Yes.
Opposed, no. And chair votes yes. And we now can move to the consent agenda. Mr. Hendrickson.
Thank you, Madam Supervisor. I move the consent agenda as presented this evening.
As I described it before.
Support.
It's supported by Trustee Wilson. Comments, questions? Then we must have a roll call vote for the consent agenda. Mr. Lemaster.
Supervisor Jackson,
Yes.
Clerk Guthrie,
Yes.
Treasurer DeShane,
Yes.
Trustee Hendrickson,
Yes.
Trustee Wilson.
Yes.
Motion carried 5-0.
Thank you. Item 10 on our agenda is questions for the attorney. We have none. And item 11 is a public hearing. I see Mr. Director Schmidt is very anxious to get this going tonight. And so we will open the public hearing at whatever time it is, and I'll turn it over to Mr. Smith.
6:40.
6:40.
Thank you. I will be brief in my remarks, and then I would ask that our consultant from Tri-Terra, Dave Van Haren, who is our Brownfield expert, that the Brownfield Redevelopment Authority hires generally to review our projects, except when he's working on the project, to give some remarks as well. So briefly, this has been floating around for the better part of the year. As costs have changed and the project has changed slightly, we stopped the review earlier this year before it came forward for a public hearing. At this point, the applicant is confident in the costs and the projections, and therefore we are bringing this forward for public hearing and potential eventual adoption by the board to then move this on to the state for review, because again, this is a plan that does capture a substantial amount of state dollars. Almost 75% of the capture will be from state dollars. So the Brownfield Redevelopment Authority has reviewed this both earlier this year and then the revised plan in August. They did recommend approval at their September 15th meeting, and that is what is in front of you this evening. So at this point, I'll turn it over to Mr. Van Haren to talk about some of the details and dollars and cents of the proposal.
Okay. If you would give us your name and address.
Yep, good evening. I'm Dave Van Haren with Tri-Terra. We're located at 1305 South Washington in Lansing. As Director Schmidt indicated, we are the consultant on behalf of Meridian Township and your Brownfield Authority for brownfield projects that get presented to the BRA board and ultimately the Township Board. So good evening and thank you for having me here. There will be a presentation tonight from the developer as well, but just as a brief summary of the project, it is right now as it stands, it's a $92 million project. Total investment is estimated at $92 million. It's 11 parcels total for the Village of Okemos project, and which will include, when everything is demolished, there's a little bit of demolition yet to be conducted, but it'll have 4 new mixed-use buildings. On the residential side, it'll be 206 residential units. The total square feet's 195,000 square feet. Again, I don't want to get it, I don't want to steal from the developer that's going to have a presentation on the project. It is, as far as a brownfield plan, it does include, the proposal includes 19 years of capture of new taxes that are going to be generated off of this project. And the total eligible activities that are going to be asked for reimbursement is $6.9 million. Part of our process is we review the brownfield plan to make sure it's not only in compliance with the state statute, but also the Brownfield Authority's policies. And so we have concluded that this brownfield plan is in accordance with Act 381 and the township's policy, the Brownfield Authority's policy. For example, the brownfield plan includes the capture of 10% of the new taxes is going to get passed right through, and 5% will be for administration of the plan by the Brownfield Board and staff for the board, and then deposits into your local revolving fund to set aside for other future projects. So in a nutshell, it's a 19-year plan for $6.9 million in eligible activities, which includes demolition, asbestos abatement, environmental cleanup, and environmental assessment. This brownfield plan is one component of a public financing structure for this project. Another, on the environmental side, the township was awarded a $2.3 million brownfield grant and loan from the Michigan Department of Environment, Great Lakes, and Energy. This brownfield plan does take in consideration that the grant and loan to make sure that there's no double counting or overlap on eligible activities, which will be monitored as part of this project, administering both the grant and loan and the brownfield plan and those activities that get reimbursed under those programs. So in conclusion, we, as I indicated, I've concluded that the brownfield plan is in compliance with Act 381 and your policy. And then I'm here to answer any questions when you get to the group discussion later on in your agenda. Thank you.
All right, thank you. At this time, are there members of the public who would like to speak to this this specific issue?
This is probably the appropriate time for me to speak, take this opportunity. Okay. Eric Helser with Advanced Redevelopment Solutions, and we have been working on the brownfield as well as all of the other incentives for this project for several years. And what I wanted to do is kind of reintroduce the project to everybody because there have been some changes. We did present this back a few months ago to the board, and then prior to that to the Brownfield Authority in March. And so I thought what I would do is go through some renderings, highlight those, and then I really have one number slide. Kind of boiled it down to a comparison to where we were and where we are today. And I think that's a good way to reflect upon the project to give everybody the complete picture. Maybe not. Let's see here. There we go. Okay, so we're looking to the southwest here, kind of a bird's eye view, and this is block 1. The project is comprised of 2 blocks. This is affectionately known historically as the bottoms up or the ACE hardware block for the project. Does this advance the slides?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Block 2 is the north block, affectionately called the Tuba Museum block to a lot of people. And that resided, before we demolished that, well over a year ago on the corner there as well of Okemos Road and Hamilton. Excuse me, I got my blocks reversed. This is the bottoms up block, and
Thank you.
there, and this is the Tuba Museum block. So thank you. So sorry about that.
Trying to
Sorry
figure
about
that one out.
They changed the perspective of the drawing on me. So start over. This is block 1, yes. And block 1 is the Tuba Museum block, to get your perspective, looking to the northwest, not to the southwest. This is block 2, looking to the southwest, and this is the bottoms-up block. So we are looking down Hamilton here on block 1 on the upper left corner picture, and then we're looking along Okemos Road in the bottom right picture. So this gives you kind of the street view, the walking view, the way the buildings have been designed and rendered. And I do want to mention too, so these aren't just concept plans. We are 100% complete on our construction documents. So since the last time that we have spoken to you, we were in process for preparing all of those. There's a huge endeavor when you go through all of that. There's all of the engineering, the foundations, the structural analysis that goes with it, in all of the units, as well as the commercial. We had to pause because what we did, we reflected on the project's success as well as the change in the commercial usage, which I'll get back to here in a second, and how we were going to park it. And so the integration of the parking component that I'm going to talk about on each block also it was very important. So what you're seeing here are actually what has been designed. It all has been memorialized into our site plan. That is one of the critical processes that we go through that ultimately has been submitted to the township for review. That was after our minor amendment that occurred last month for the PUD. The agencies that are involved here that we've been communicating with for well over a year, but very diligently with, are the drain office, the county drain office, the road department, as well as Eagle in all of this. That's in addition to obviously the township staff and all the departments. So block 2, similar types of view again. We're looking in the upper corner. We're looking down Hamilton on block 2, and then down Okemos Road on that block. This view, a lot of people have seen. I know it's been featured in the press and so forth, that upper left corner. Again, we're a street view looking toward block 1, the original Tuba Museum block, and gives you kind of that perspective of what you would experience either driving to the north, kind of glancing to the west down Hamilton Road. The bottom picture there is a similar kind of westerly view, continuing that look as you continue to get up to the intersection and look to the west. So what we are showing you here is on block 1. This is the integration of a 2-level. It is at grade, and then a rooftop level, second story parking deck. And that services, and I have the unit counts and everything for this, both public and private parking. What we have modeled here, and which is under review by the township staff, is a shared parking during the day. When the residents leave, it opens up quite a few parking spaces for the public to service the commercial that ultimately would be downtown. This is a view on block 2's deck as well. And I'm going to go back to block 1. What you're seeing in the right hand is the connection and the separation. So the parking structure itself is a completely independent structure. It is not integrated into the buildings, so it can be completed at different times and different stages as the project unfolds. And then that connection that you see there is a connection into the building for the residential units. There is a pass-through to the street from the parking structures on both blocks, and I'll bounce back to one of the other images so you can see that. This allows for the public to basically gain access to the Hamilton roadside where predominance of all the commercial is. So hopefully you can read this, and I'm going to go through and mention it. This is the summary slide of where we were and where we are today. So originally back in March, we were about an $85 million project. That price tag has increased for several factors since that time frame up to August. One of the major factors is the parking structures in both blocks. Then additionally, with those parking structures, we had to accommodate additional environmental work. Significantly more removal of soils on Block 2. And I say significantly, really it's in the price tag, because that's a hazardous site as opposed to what's typical on most of these brownfields are non-hazardous soils that are typical of like gas stations and so forth. But we're at such levels of contamination on that Block 2 that it is at a hazardous level. It can only go to a couple of locations at a premium disposal rate. The amount of square footage decrease in commercial is a little more than 9,000 square feet. And I'm going to go to this drawing here, which is Block 2, and it's kind of the mirror image on Block 1. So I'll just refer to this block, okay? So if you were to kind of flip this development over onto the north block or Block 1, it mirrors this. So on the hard corner, as we call it, of Okemos and Hamilton Road, you have a restaurant at that corner. That is replicated on the opposite corner as well. The entire street front along Hamilton has been retained as commercial, predominantly retail. What we did was we shallowed up the depth of the commercial and retail. As everybody knows, commercial and retail in office is suffering and still is suffering. Everything has changed and seems to remain changed since COVID. We do not have the large office tenants that we had originally contemplated for coming into Block 2 in particular, as well as the retailers want smaller space. So this will accommodate smaller retailers, more of your local flair type of homegrown retail in a village setting like this, which we think is going to be pretty amenable to the development itself. So the feeling, the appetite for having that village feel is all here. It has not changed. So just to be clear, while we reduced commercial and retail, we have maintained it on the entire street front on Hamilton. And in fact, we even wrapped it with some staff suggestions, and through discussions over the last several months, we have wrapped that around Hamilton on Ardmore on both blocks, so it continues a little bit down. So at least it has a corner on that particular corner as well. So going back to the comparisons, get to the residential units. When we reduced the commercial square footage, that did increase 6 units from the original 200. And then to the parking structures. So I've added a little table because of some questions I had at one of the other meetings with some of you present. What is that breakdown? And I'm going to give you totals of both blocks 1 and 2 here. You can do the math if you would like. But the residential private that affords us 185 units. This is just on the sites themselves. This is not on the street. All of the street parking has not changed, and that is still remaining as originally planned for public use. Public anytime parking is 57 in those 2 decks. And then public day, which will add to that 57, but is private reserved in the evening for tenants of the apartments to say that adds another 135 in totality. So during the day, that brings the public availability at 192. So that mix does give a lot of flexibility. That's what you see in a lot of more urban areas for the downtowns where you have that shared environment. These businesses will be closed at night. The restaurants will be the ones that probably will remain open a little bit later. There'll be plenty of parking in the dedicated public spaces as well as the on-street parking for those vehicles. Schedule is looking at spring for a start. We do have a lot of legwork, as Mr. Schmidt had mentioned, with the state. That's our next steps. We have several steps with Eagle as well as the MEDC to go through there. Hopefully we'll be able to stay on schedule pending their approval processes. Taxable value increased by a little more than $1 million with the ads that we have done and the changes to the project. All of the taxing jurisdictions, the annual taxes paid has increased by about $74,000 to a little more than $1 million. That is all of the annual taxes paid once this is complete. So a pretty substantial tax generation project that is local and state taxes all combined of just more than $1 million. As Mr. Van Haren from Triterra mentioned, the duration of this plan for the total plan capture is 19 years. The duration of the plan itself is 20, just due to the nature of when the start of work will begin. We talked about the eligible activity costs. The administration has increased. Local Brownfield revolving fund is now up to $376,000. The state's revolving fund itself is about $737,000. And then last but not least, which I think is an important factor to always look at these plans, not all the taxes are captured. So it's really important, the debt mills, a lot of the schools, or the township debt, county debt, those are non-capturable millages. And so based on the current millages rates that are in place today, we're estimating about $3.7 million will be going, once this project is completed, over that period of time, will be going to those other millages. So there is an immediate benefit over those 19 years to those institutions. So with that, I know you're going to conclude your public hearing. Keep that going, and I'll be happy to answer questions later.
Okay. So thank you very much. At this point, I would ask if there is, again, anyone in the public who would like to comment on what they've heard or want to say about this project. Seeing none, Mr. Schmidt.
If I may just officially add, in accordance with state law, 10 days prior to this, we did provide notice to all the taxing jurisdictions as required. And also in accordance with state law, you cannot take action on this until 10 days after this. So okay. We have met all the state publishing requirements as noted. Thank you.
Okay, I will note that in our discussion items tonight, we will come back to this issue for board comment and questions. And so at this time, we can close our public hearing and move on to item 12, which is our action items. We have one item tonight, which has to do with the third quarter budget amendments. And our finance director, Ms. Garver, will introduce that item for our consideration.
Thank you. Attached in your packet is a detailed list of the third quarter budget amendments. And just a general overview of these, based on our fund balance at December 31st, 2021 in the audit, it was about $13.1 million. The original budget use of the fund balance for 2022 was about $2.7 million, and now with these third quarter budget amendments, in addition to the first and second quarter, we are projecting a use of only about $500,000, which will bring our projected fund balance at the end of this year to about $12.7 million. Just going over a few of the more notable budget amendments. We have an amendment to reduce the rental registration revenue by $50,000 just due to a change in the fee structure for this year. Interest revenue, because interest rates have gone up and we're thinking will continue to go up, We're increasing that by $150,000. For IT software, there was Power DMS software related to the police department and clerk's office. We actually originally budgeted that for 2023, but we're going to move forward into 22 with that due to the, I think, 5 police officers that are in the academy right now, because that's part of their training program. Another large one you'll notice in here is an increase in revenues for the 2022 road bond proceeds. That's in a couple of funds because we budget the actual amount and then the premium amount into a different area. Another area that has larger amounts is the American Rescue Plan Act fund. So there we are amending the budget to match the amounts that the board has approved so far. The $1.3 million for roads, I think it was about $970,000 for IT, and then the $260,000 for the fire cots. And then kind of the last area is a larger increase in the revenues for sewer and water, just because there's more development going on than planned with connection fees and that sort of thing. Happy to answer any other questions.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Board members? Mr. Hendrickson.
I move to approve the third quarter 2022 budget amendments with an increase in budgeted fund balance for the general fund in the amount of $191,705, which projects a use of the fund balance of $465,403. Based on the 2021 results, a projected fund balance at December 31, 2022 will be $12,700,113.
Support.
Supported by Trustee Wilson. Mr. Hendrickson.
Thank you, Madam Supervisor. And thank you, Director Garber, for giving us a summary of the changes that were being made. I see nothing overly worrisome here. I think this is all pretty standard, and I always like the sound of getting things done quicker than we had originally anticipated. So thank you for highlighting that. And I'll be obviously supporting this these amendments as presented.
And Trustee Wilson.
I also saw nothing that stood out to me, and I think this is appropriate to make this amendment.
Other board members, Treasurer DeShane.
I too support the budget amendment. The only problem is you stole my thunder about the additional interest income that was going to be part of my next quarterly board report. But it has been a good year for interest income. Fed has raised the rates 3 times now, and a 4th rate is expected. It's not a good time to get a mortgage, but it is a good time if you have to purchase safe investments as we do. Rates have gone up. Otherwise, the amendments look agreeable to me. Thank you.
No further comments. I would just add that this budget amendment item looks different than it has before. Mm-hmm. I appreciate all the information that I gleaned from reading it, and appreciate the detail that you included in your report this time. I too am in support of this amendment. No further questions? Mr. LeMaster, I believe we need a roll call vote.
Clerk Guthrie?
Yes.
Treasurer DeShane?
Yes.
Trustee Hendrickson?
Yes.
Trustee Wilson?
Yes.
Supervisor Jackson?
Yes.
Motion carried 5-0.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Garber. We now come to item 13, board discussion items. There are 5 tonight, and the first takes us back to the Village of Oakham's Brownfield plan.
Thank you. I will be brief, as my compatriots in this project provided you with a substantial amount of information during the public hearing part of the process. Mm-hmm. You know, as complicated as this project is, and I will say this probably in every brownfield that comes forward, the brownfield is relatively easy in comparison. The staff has reviewed this. The assessor agrees with the projections on taxable value. We've looked at the pro forma. We understand how this is moving forward. Our consultant has looked at it, and it is in compliance with our policy and Act 381. Without the brownfield, the project doesn't go forward. It fills a gap in the project. Doesn't fill the whole gap because a brownfield can't do that. Brownfield can only fill specific portions, but it fills a portion of that gap. And so from staff's perspective, this is, you know, a relatively easy part of the overall package for this project. Again, as we talked about with Hazlitt Village Square, the important piece is ultimately the governing body making a determination on the public purpose, and we have outlined the items within the act that the project clearly meets, and then we will discuss the public purpose at a future meeting with the board. At this time, I'd be happy to answer any questions. Mr. Van Haren is here, and the applicant as well is here.
So board members, do you have questions? Ms. Treasurer DeShane?
I do have a question about the change in the commercial space and its reduction. And in particular, it appears you've taken commercial space and added 6 units from what were otherwise commercial, what was otherwise commercial space. Is that a correct assessment of how you've reconfigured it?
That is correct. The 6 residential units don't take up the entirety of the space that was removed because they took the commercial space and essentially cut it in half. And so the frontage is still there. It's the rear part that was going to be, you know, loading, stock space, things like that have been converted into apartments and back of house space for the building.
Regarding the public use and benefit, and it's very important to residents that we not just develop 2 large apartment buildings on these 2 blocks. My concern about shortening the commercial spaces, we may have commercial space in name, only too small to put a real restaurant in there or a real shop or a real art and craft studio. Has any analysis been done on what the commercial use of the shortened space would likely be?
I don't think it fundamentally changes the types of uses that could go in there because the use, if you needed 5,000 square feet, you can still get 5,000 square feet. It just ends up being configured differently. The corner spaces where they have proposed restaurants still are very viable for restaurants, and those spaces actually haven't changed. It's the spaces along Hamilton Road, so the secondary street, that have been shortened up. It should make them more leasable because they are easier for a smaller tenant to get involved with, as opposed to having to lease, you know, typically on a building like typically on a new construction, they split it up into 1,200, 1,200, 1,200, or 25, 25, 25. This makes it a little more configurable for them because they don't have the full depth to work with. They have you're only going to be worried about the frontage, and so you can cut it up into smaller spaces potentially.
I understand that, and I understand that they can be moved horizontally and not just vertically. My concern is we're creating a Hollywood set situation where it looks great from the street, but it's really too small to have a viable long-term business there, but rather it'd be if it's too narrow. So I've yet to see that, but I'm glad you've looked at this and can assure this board that this is commercially viable space.
It is.
Thank you.
Trustee Hendrickson.
Thank you, Madam Supervisor. I'm curious about some of the financial information. I'm wondering if Mr. Helser can pull up that slide that you were showing us a moment, or maybe Tim can do that for us. The slide that was, yeah, that's the one. My question, I guess, begins at, it appears as though we've added $37 million to the overall capital outlay expected from March until now.
7.
Is that 85?
85 to 92. It's
I'm
85.
sorry.
Yep.
Wow. Yeah, that's a little small. Okay, 7 million. That's a little bit more easy to swallow, I guess. So
thank you, Tom. Thank you.
Yes.
It's hard to read.
Okay.
There we go.
Yes. So $7 million increase, and you say that has largely to do with the applicant says that has largely to do with the addition of the parking decks. So if it costs more, can you tell me why we're doing it? Because just as a refresher, my understanding when this originally came to be, and this has gone back and forth a few times, was that this was going to be underground parking, was it not?
So The original conceived project was underground parking, and so that changed. That was pre-COVID, and then we went to surface parking. And then through that analysis and working with the township, there's a lot of moving pieces here. So our original tenant was going to include Douglas J. Douglas J has decided to stay predominantly in their current location and not relocate into Block 2. So this is one of the major reasons for the reduction in the commercial. It has really eliminated quite a bit of that commercial office type square footage that Douglas J would have taken. When Douglas J was going to leave what we call Block 3, their current block, that was going to free up the parking for the project. So that building would have no longer resided there. There would have been different configurations of buildings on the street front, and it would have been converted into a more usable space. When that changed, we had to relook at how we were going to address parking. So that's why the parking structures, as you see here, are there. Reason we went to structures like this as opposed to the underground parking is predominantly due to cost. Not only for the hard cost of construction just related to the structures themselves, but due to the environmental. Again, Block 2 being very expensive in addressing the environmental contamination. This reduced millions of dollars in soil removal. So when we went back to the deck, however, from surface to the deck, how the grades change, we had to add back in some of those dirt costs, not all of them. So the deck did drive up some of the environmental costs. That's why the brownfield rose.
Okay. So I think I understand that. I do have some concerns about the location of the new residential, because I wonder how many people you're going to have wanting to rent units that are looking out their window at the headlights of the parking deck.
So we looked at that very carefully. So our architect, Bergman, was concerned with that at first as well. But they, in their mind, have eliminated the headlight concern. That's something that's just dealt with in an urban setting. There's, I don't know what they call it, but it's like brake walls that are at a certain height where car heights are at, that break that bright light coming on in. If you saw from one of the earlier drawings, the offset, so it's not right up on the building. There is that larger offset of that for those units. So, yeah, detached. Yeah, then it's completely detached, separate structure.
Okay, and then if you could, maybe Tim, if you could scooch that over to show me the parking table one more time. That blown up a little bit. You were going over I was trying to keep up with the numbers that you were leaving us here, and I just want to be sure. So if you could remind me again the total number of residential units in each block.
So in each block, I have to look at that breakdown. It's about 103. I think it's 101 and 104. I can't remember the exact. There's a little bit of offset. It's about 50-50.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in each deck, there are basically going to be somewhere in the ballpark of 10 to 15 units worth of cars that don't have reserved spaces. Is that accurate?
Yeah, that's accurate.
Okay.
So the spaces that are in the second row of each of those total 57, that's the public anytime when I added those two together, 31 and the 26. The private vehicles, the 95 and the 90, that's 185 total, so you're correct.
Okay. So I guess my concern, it centers almost entirely around 6 p.m., right? Because 6 p.m. people are coming home from work, and 6 p.m. is when many people are going to want to use the restaurants that are coming in as your anchor tenants on the corners. And my concern is that the spaces that you're freeing up during the day are going to be full, and that's going to be an aggravating issue for everyone involved, especially for the residents who are coming home from work, only to find that there are no spaces, that there are not spaces enough reserved for every resident And also the people who are here they're here to dine at the restaurants or shop at the shops in the evening are taking up the unreserved spaces.
Yeah, so the two corners are the restaurants. So the rest of the retail, commercial down Hamilton are not. They'll more than likely be closed at that 6 o'clock hour, most likely. Some might say open a little bit later. There is also on-street parking. I don't have that number in front of me here. John, do you happen to recall what that number is?
It can't be more than 20, 25 spaces, I wouldn't think. It's not a long street.
Yeah, well, so we have Hamilton, and we also have it on Ardmore as well. There's parking on both those.
Sure.
Both those streets. And it does continue down past Hamilton toward Block 3, and there are some wraparound on Clinton and Methodist as well.
Are these paid ramps?
That has yet to be determined for the public. Right now, it's not conceived. We projected no revenue and no usage to leave them open.
Okay.
It allows it to be more rentable as well for our tenants that would take up the commercial if that was free parking.
Okay. Can you talk to me about the timing of the Brownfield implementation? That to me is of great interest when determining and maybe, I don't know if you or Tim might be better for this, great interest when determining the public purpose, right? In what time frame does the activities covered in the Brownfield plan take place in the grand schedule of the project?
So there's a category called exempt activities, which don't need pre-approval. Those are all your due diligence, usually your planning, which we have a great deal amount of due to the environmental. So that's been ongoing for the last few years, as well as asbestos abatement that occurred and some of the demolition activities that have occurred to date. So as far as the timing, you've seen the project, you've seen all the buildings go away, also in order to get to this point, all the design and engineering. Additionally, that went along with this, as far as the timing goes, vapor mitigation systems are required on both blocks. One, because of the petroleum, the old gas station, Clark Station on the north block along Hamilton, at Ardmore in Hamilton. And then, of course, because of the multiple gasoline releases starting at Okemos Road in Hamilton, going all the way to the west along Hamilton Road, and then the dry cleaner ultimately at that corner on Block 2. So that's all been designed and engineered already into that. So all of that is what we call that pre-development costs. So as far as the timing goes, our next step, once it is approved ultimately by the Township Board, is to then work with Eagle for what's called an Act 381 work plan. So that is a very technical document. It is the one that they ultimately approve for the use of the state tax capture. So timing is critical on that. That gives us the winter to do that before spring and have that approved. MEDC is one of our other major capital stack partners in this. They're going to require that to be prepared and be submitted in order for them to consider the next set of packages for this project. So timing-wise, hopefully I've answered that where this sits. Brownfield's always the first that has to come in. The TIF is always first. The DDA was done a couple years ago, so that was even done earlier than this, and then everything else will follow.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Trustee Wilson.
I'll add on to Trustee Hendrickson's comments that one of the concerns, I know this is not the appropriate time, because we're considering the Brownfield, we're not considering the site plan. But I share your concerns about the parking issue, and that is because we've had a fundamental shift in the nature of work since COVID, where many people are working from home full-time, or they're doing some kind of hybrid work where they're home 3 days and in the office 2 days. And when the site plan comes up, I would really like us to consider whether this parking will be adequate to address the new work environment that we see ourselves in. And that's just my comment. Okay. Thank you.
Anyone else? Clerk Guthrie.
Thank you, Madam Supervisor. I want to expand on
both trustees' comments in that regard with the parking structure. I too have concerns with that. I mean, I would like to see how it's calculated based off of new numbers for how people are working today. When I look at those site plans, I know we're not talking about that tonight, but when I look at those, my immediate thought is I would not want to be on one of those balconies staring at a parking lot. I would rather have some greenscapes, some trees, some greenery. And so I do have some concerns in that regard. And I also have concerns when I look at the Juliet balconies that are along, or that they look like Juliet balconies in the drawings rather than full balconies. And then I do have a question. Actually, I'll hold it for a future time because I know that there was some discussion in the past about using space on the roof. And I didn't really see how that was being utilized for individual units at all, if that portion had been dropped.
There's a very small amount up there, and just to clarify something, the site plan will not come to the board. The site plan is an entirely administrative function of staff at this point. So we will obviously review the parking, and I think planners everywhere right now are in an interesting position because we have long advocated for shared parking, and now there is a question as to whether or not the world has changed. And we don't know how much it has. In a relatively suburban environment, it's probably different than downtown Lansing, because downtown Lansing is a ghost town right now, candidly. So that is something that I think everyone is going to struggle with here for a couple of years. But to be clear, the entirety of the site plan at this point is an administrative function of staff. But that there is a small area of rooftop space still existing for a couple of the units.
So given that, and looking at the parking structure and zero greenery, I would highly recommend that there be some greenery added to that parking structure. I'm less concerned about the number of spaces as I am concerned about any type of greenery, any type of trees. It's completely barren. It's just a concrete jungle right there.
Treasurer Deletion.
Thank you. I am less concerned about parking because the more we insist upon more parking, the more we take away one of our key objectives of this proposal, which is a walkable community, a walkable development. We can force a lot of parking on the developer, but the more we do, the more unappealing it is for people that are looking for a walkable community. So I'm not saying we give up all oversight of parking, but there is a trade-off, and the more parking we insist upon, the less walkable and appealing it is for that segment of the population that really may only get by with one car and does not have a pickup truck and an SUV, but instead has found a way to live with one vehicle, or understands parking could sometimes be a challenge. We're very intentional over the years of creating a project that was walkable, that people weren't so car dependent, and to force the developer now to add more parking, to me, is contrary to what we told the developer years ago. Those are my comments. Thank you.
Trustee Wilson.
I'll just do one follow-up, and that is that we have a single-family neighborhood that is immediately adjacent to this project. And my concern, and I've expressed this before, is that we do not want overnight parking ending up in front of people's homes in that single-family neighborhood. So however we find that balance, it's going to be tricky, but that would be the ultimate goal for me.
Understood.
Thank you.
And I have just one more parking question, but it's different. I think I've heard somewhere that on one side, that on both sides it's two-level parking. And one side, it's one level is below ground. No? Yeah.
No. So to be clear, there is no below-grade parking.
Okay.
Functionally, below-grade parking is roughly double the cost of an above-ground space in a structure. So, and given the environmental cost, you're probably looking at 6 figures of space. Mm-hmm. So what they're doing is they're utilizing the fact that they, A, have to excavate a substantial amount of soils, and B, that there's already a bit of a grade change there. And so what happens is the first level of parking will essentially be a surface lot. The second level of parking will be a one-story pedestal on top.
Gotcha.
And you'll actually enter from two different directions to save. It's a more efficient design if you enter from two different sides that way.
And so both sides, the parking on both sides of Hamilton is the same?
Correct.
The design is the
It's
same.
roughly the same, yes.
Okay. Other questions? So, we can't do anything for 10 days.
Correct. You cannot take action this
When
evening.
this board sees it again, it will be about approving the Brownfield plan specifically.
Correct.
On the basis of the public value of all of the work that's going into this project.
Correct.
Then we look to hear from you soon.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Item B on our discussion items is Lake Lansing Road Transportation Improvement Project. And I think kind of an explanation, the county was responsible for the public hearing on this issue. Our taking it up tonight is just merely for information to the community about what's happening, and that's all, really. Am I correct, Mr. Opsimer?
Yes, correct.
Okay.
Director Schmidt, could I ask you to point me on how I can get my PDF up there? For some reason, the function key is not working. Yeah. I wanted to be able to zoom in easier than in a PowerPoint. I thought the function key would just shortcut it. There you go. Okay. Duplicate. Perfect. Thank you. All right. Good evening, Supervisor Jackson and board members. Correct. This is an Ingham County Road Department project. This is the only road project that they have slated for the township limits in 2023. So we are going from a very intense construction year to hopefully a relatively mild construction year, relatively speaking. So this has actually been a phased project. This has been something that has been occurring since 2015 from Marsh Road to Abbott Road. What we are talking about tonight is the westernmost segment of the project. So right now the road has already been road dieted, which is the conversion from 2 through lanes in each direction, east and west, down to 1 through lane in each direction, left-hand turn lane, and non-motorized or bike lanes on the shoulders. So the road diet has already taken place from Marsh Road to just west of Hagedorn Road and just before Hart Street. Okay. So the Hagedorn Road intersection will not be under construction. The construction zone will start just west of the Hagedorn intersection and will conclude at the Abbott Road intersection of Lake Lansing Road. Primary purpose, these obviously provide a non-motorized option with the bike lanes, but also they significantly reduce rear end accidents because you have that left-hand turn lane. So the left-hand through lane is not being stopped for left-hand turn movement, right? So we're reducing those rear end accidents, especially as distracted driving increases. And so again, I'll just zoom in just slightly here. These are the project limits east to west. So right here you have Hagedorn Road. If you can see my cursor down on the bottom right-hand corner. And then concluding up here at Abbott Road in Lake Lansing.
I don't see the cursor.
It's very hard to see, sorry.
Oh, there it is.
Yep. But this upper left-hand arrow is Abbott Road, so that's the western boundary of the project, right? Hagedorn to Abbott. Again, the lane conversion. And so one of the key facets of the project is actually stems from the county trails and park millage. The millage was just renewed for another 6 years, so it's on its second 6-year term. I think it expires in 2026. East Lansing and Meridian Township have both secured funding to create a trail loop, right? We want to loop our trail systems whenever we can. So this map, and I'll zoom in a little bit more so that you can see more closely. shows that proposed trail loop and where we're building that connection. So the green lines right here are existing trails. This is all City of East Lansing proper. The trail loop connection is the yellow dashed line in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen. So that's the City of East Lansing's connection, being funded in part by the County Park and Trail Millage. And the black line there is the township's pathway project, proposed pathway project, also supported by the county millage on the western side of Tower Avenue. So right where that black line ends is actually the Birch Row Tower and Lake Lansing intersection. I know it's hard to see my cursor there, but it's that yellow circle on the map. And so today, if you look at this intersection, let me pull up a graphic of the intersection.
Okay.
All right. So today, if you're at this intersection, we have a slip lane. A slip lane is a lane that bypasses the signalized intersection. So today, if you're traveling eastbound on Lake Lansing Road right here, you actually have a slip lane and you just bypass that entire intersection and you keep proceeding south on Lake Lansing Road, and then Lake Lansing Road curves back eastbound, right? So basically what the road department is proposing, and this is the plan as of last year when our joint transportation commissions for Meridian and East Lansing met, we're going to make the entire road dieted Lake Lansing Road a slip road in essence.
Okay.
So then we're going to have a different phase of the intersection. Part of why we're looking so intricately at the intersection is to get pedestrians across it. We can't get across today. There is no way to safely cross Lake Lansing Road for bicyclists and pedestrians. The other facet of this intersection is that you have very, very different traffic volumes. Lake Lansing Road has significantly more traffic than Birch Row, and Birch Row has significantly more traffic than Tower Avenue. So having a traditional intersection at this location would significantly reduce driving times and waiting times at the intersection. Today, if you're going westbound, you do have to approach that intersection and wait for the green arrow to turn left onto Lake Lansing Road and continue, right? So we're increasing that westbound movement for Lake Lansing. So it's actually better for pedestrians and for motorists. Now, what developed today, which is new, and you're not aware of this, but this just occurred this morning, the public hearing was held on October 4th in the evening via Zoom. That was actually our last board meeting. So I attended until our board meeting began, but there was some concern at the public hearing about the Tower Birch Row configuration. Right now, if you can see my cursor, and again, I apologize.
We can see it.
Okay, good. We're going to have cars queuing up here, right? There's nothing stopping traffic on Birch Row. Cars are going to come, and they're going to queue up here at the signalized intersection. The problem is Birch Row traffic, you could have cars queuing up here, and then it's going to block Tower Avenue traffic here. So we're going to flip that on its head now, and this is a design that came out just this morning from the road department. It's not fully engineered, but we're flipping that configuration. Now, Birch Row traffic is going to hit a stop sign here. So they will have to yield at a stop sign to Tower Avenue traffic. Tower Avenue traffic won't stop. And that's because Tower Avenue will queue less cars. There will be fewer instances where cars are queuing up so much here that you can't make this left-hand turn movement from Birch Row onto Tower Avenue. So we basically flipped that. And it also addresses one thing that we've been talking about, both the Transportation Commission members for Meridian Township, Director Schmidt, myself, former Deputy Manager Perry, which is a crossing here on Birch Row. The previous configuration eliminated this crossing that is there today. There was still a way to cross it safely. It was just kind of a different, you had to kind of loop around the intersection to do so. So this provides a little bit more efficient option for pedestrians to navigate that intersection. So unlike the prior projects, we are actually looking at the prior Lake Lansing Road Diet projects. This one also has this intensive reconfiguration of the intersection. And then the final note that I would make about the intersection are just these rain garden areas. It's called green space here, but just kind of well, they do say potential rain gardens. These will be rain gardens. That was a request of the Ingham County Drain Commission office. It's consistent with the 2 drain projects that we did in the Tower Gardens neighborhood. And then lastly, I will just pull up real quick the funding sources. So to help accommodate these changes to the intersection, the Ingham County Road Department was able to secure transportation safety funds. These are federal funds. So $600,000 was secured through federal resources to help with this reconfiguration of the intersection, in addition to the larger project, which is the milling and resurfacing and changing of the configuration of Lake Lansing Road. That is my overview. If I had to show you one other thing real quick, it would just be the detour. Obviously, the detour route for this is going to be Hagedorn, Saginaw Highway, and Abbott. Happy to answer any questions that you have. The only recommendation from the Transportation Commission was including bike emblems. I have asked that the road department include bike emblems as they did from Saginaw Highway to Hagedorn Road, the most recent phase of this. They put bike emblems at every cross street. So if you're at Park Lake and Lake Lansing, there's bike emblems. As you approach Skyline Drive, there's a bike emblem. As you approach Skyline Court, I think it is, or the Greens, they also have a bike emblem there. So every cross street has bike emblems. So we asked them just to replicate that for this phase of the road diet. Thank you.
Thank you. I would just note that it is important to remember that even though this is not our project, our Transportation Commission and our road staff and public utilities, I guess, have participated in the design and the desired amenities offered by this particular county project. Questions? Mr. Hendrickson first.
Thank you, Madam Supervisor. I have 2 questions. So can you describe to me the signalization of this intersection just so I make sure I understand it correctly?
Yep. So this will be a 3-way intersection fully signalized, so you'll have the lights suspended over the intersection here. And so there will be 2 crosswalks on Lake Lansing. So depending on which way the pedestrian's approaching the intersection, they could go to the nearest crosswalk, so you won't have to bypass. There was some talk early on about eliminating one of those. Both were kept in due to input from at the staff level and East Lansing and Meridian Transportation Commissions. And they're fully signalized, so there will be a push button so that pedestrians and bicyclists can pause the light and get the white walk light for the crossings.
Wonderful, thank you. Yeah, I think you referred to it as slip road earlier, which had me a little confused because I didn't understand that word. But the other question I had was, you've listed in the memo here that there's an anticipated 12-week construction time, and of course we're not going to hold you to 12 weeks, but or hold them to 12 weeks. Do they have a projected start date for that?
Yeah, let me take a look here. It's going to be when the asphalt plant's open. They might get in and do a little bit of work before then. Let me see if they put it in their presentation, but I don't think they have a hard schedule just yet.
Okay. Suffice it to say it'll be during the warm months of 2023.
Yeah, it's going to be early to mid-May. Asphalt plants will open around May 15th. They might start, especially some of the intersection work and some of the demo, early May, late April, at the very earliest.
Okay, thank you.
And this is the construction schedule as of right now. I would take it with a grain of salt. You could see this extend to 20 weeks depending on subcontractors. The biggest challenge with maintaining construction schedules is getting your contractors on the job site because they're in such high demand.
Thank you.
Okay. Trustee Wilson.
I have the same question about the signals. Could we go back to the map for just a moment?
Yep. And the one thing I didn't state when I was talking or answering Trustee Hendrickson's question was that obviously this is a signalized crosswalk with push buttons as well.
Both of them are?
All 3 of these lakes.
Great.
These are the 3 ways to cross Lake Lansing. They're all signalized with push buttons.
Okay.
Now, this is a stop sign.
Right.
This is a stop sign crosswalk, and in order to cross Tower, you do have to come down and approach this intersection and cross at the signalized crossing.
So just for perspective, is the Quality Dairy immediately south and east of that green space?
Yep, the Quality Dairy is right here.
Okay.
And their curb cut won't actually change. Their curb cut is roughly right here. I'm going to flip to the old configuration because it's nice in the sense that it's overlaid on top of the current imagery of the site conditions.
I see it. Good.
Yep. And it's going to significantly increase green space if you look at just this version to overlay it. This is all going to be turned into green space. These little islands here, 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 here. So there will be a significant amount of, you'll basically have a big green island out in front of the surface parking here at the Quality Dairy. The curb cuts will not change. The curb cut will stay here. And the curb cut for the strip mall at the northwest corner of the intersection will also stay in its current place.
Great, thank you.
Anyone else? Clerk Governor.
Is there currently a sidewalk on that south side, or that doesn't exist?
There is
right
not.
now?
That actually came up when, what was it? When East Lansing was redoing their elementary schools, the children in White Hills had to go to Donnelly. There was a year where Donnelly had the old school and the new school open.
Right.
And so it essentially had White Hills students attending the new or the old school and the Donnelly students attending the other school. And so that actually did come up. The city of East Lansing has no plans to make a pathway on that side. And that's due to, they have, through the neighborhood, you can connect out to Hagedorn Road where there is a sidewalk. So the students that live south of Lake Lansing usually take their neighborhood sidewalks out to Hagedorn Road, where they do have connectivity between the city's infrastructure and the townships.
Where's the township property line in this, or the township boundary line in this?
At this intersection, we control 3 of the quadrants.
Yep.
Basically everything except for the southwest corner. So the southwest corner down here, southwest of Lake Lansing Road there, that's city of East Lansing.
Okay,
Everything
so-
else is the township.
So if that sidewalk were extended on that south side there, that would be East Lansing, not Meridian Township.
Yeah, and they are building a trail, and that was part of the trail leg here. So let me zoom back in on that map. So the city of East Lansing is building that yellow dashed trail from Pebblebrook Lane in the White Hills subdivision through their park system and up to that southwest corner of the intersection.
Okay.
And then we're building our pathway on the western side of Tower Avenue, assuming that we can get the required easements for its construction, so that you could take that north and you could take that to the City of East Lansing's park, the aquatic center, and the other public services and amenities that are available to residents up there. And it fulfills that loop, that larger trail loop that we want.
Other questions? Comments? Thank you, Mr. Opsimer.
Absolutely. Thank you.
It's been very helpful, to me at least, and I presume to others in the community who needed more information. Item 13C, Community Services Millages. Mr. Walsh will talk to us about that.
Thank you, Madam Supervisor, members of the board. I'll be brief. We have a community services millage. It started in 2002. It's a very small millage. It's about less than 0.15 of 1 mil. It was voters approved it again in 2012 and here recently in 2022. It's for 3 purposes. It's for the Community Needs Fund, it's for recreation, and it's for the senior center. At this last election in 2022, our council suggested that we add language to which a portion, at the end of the ballot language, and it's in front of you, of which a portion will be distributed to such other authorities as the township board determines appropriate. What this really means is that if a Brownfield authority, you talked about earlier tonight, or any kind of TIF, tax increment financing authority, were to be approved, that some of the millage could, a very small portion, could end up being transferred to an authority. It never meant that any of these funds would not be used for any other cause other than the 3 that are delineated in the millage ballot wording. A citizen has raised the issue, and it's more than just the citizen. It has come up, there's been some meetings over at the senior center because, as I mentioned earlier this evening, there's some issues over there with some improvements that need to be made that are not being made, let's just say, in a timely fashion. And some people are getting the perception, because this issue is out there, that somehow all the funds that are earmarked or supposed to be earmarked towards the senior center are not going towards the senior center. We've met with one of the residents. We've explained it very clearly. He understands that now. We actually, Treasurer DeShane, Director Luann Maisner, who quasi oversees the senior center. That's a whole other story. And the three of us sat down with Mr. Gillespie, who brought this forward. He's a very intelligent individual. He's worked on hundreds of millages in his career for school districts and such, and he clearly understands ballot language. He's not pointing fingers. He just wants it out there and to be clear. So the reason this is on your agenda tonight is to consider whether you want to adopt some sort of language that clearly spells out that the funds that were approved in 2022 are only going to these sources, and 100% of the funds are going there. I think it could go, don't need to do it, I understand it, but I think it goes a long way to clear up some misunderstandings that might be out there. Be happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Trustee Wilson.
Would not the ballot language supersede a resolution after the fact?
Yeah, and so if there's yes, if there's a Brownfield authority or something that comes up, certainly the money will legally, like it would transfer over to that taxing authority. That is correct. This is more of a message to the community than anything else. It would not. If something came up like a Brownfield authority, it could still transfer funds away from this millage like any other millage, but movement by this board would clear up any misconceptions, perceptions, reality, right? And so any misperceptions that money is going to other causes other than these three.
Okay, thank you.
Clerk Guthrie.
Thank you, Madam Supervisor. The way when I read the millage language, the way I read it, it clearly spells out, and maybe I'm missing something, you could point it out to me, that this money is to be used for senior citizen, recreation, and human services millage. That's what the language says. So I'm confused my only confusion is how is it distributed amongst those three, not is it going to be going somewhere else?
Yeah.
So am I missing something in this millage renewal language? Is there something I'm not seeing?
Well, this isn't on the agenda for your understanding of it. This is on the agenda tonight for everyone's understanding of it. No, there isn't anything missing except for the language that is at the last sentence of the ballot language. The last sentence says there's a portion can be distributed to other authorities by the township board determines appropriate. People are reading into that to say if the board decides that we need a new fire, I understand it's not the case.
Okay.
I'm dealing with perception, not reality. And I thought this is a simple way to clear up any perceptions that are out there. Money is not being used to earmark for a fire truck. It's not being used for raises. It's not being used to fund a new office chair. It's going towards these 3 years. We all know that. But if you read this ballot language, it can be interpreted differently.
So this resolution is basically saying that it is for these three things and nothing else.
That's right.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Whether it's necessary or not, I just think it's it's the best way we could come up with internally, the treasurer and Director Maisner and I.
Treasurer DeShane.
We did discuss how the money is being spent with Mr. Gillespie, and he was very satisfied that, in fact, we are following the intent of the millage. That language, however, which says of which a portion will be distributed to such other authorities as the township board determines appropriate, is a huge catch-all. And we could do a lot of money, almost anything with that money as we determine appropriate. I understand the citizens' concern. For that reason, I'm going to move that we suspend our rules and vote on this tonight.
Support.
It's been moved and supported that we suspend our rules. All in favor of the motion, please say yes.
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 Opposed?
Okay.
The chair votes yes as well, and so we will suspend our rules. Mr. Hendrickson, we have suspended our rules. Mr. Hendrickson.
Thank you, Madam Supervisor. I'll make the motion this evening on this resolution. I did note earlier that there is what appears to be some words missing in the now therefore be it resolved. There's only one, now therefore be it resolved. Currently, the resolution merely reads that the township shall earmark the 2022 community services millage. So I'm going to add the language from the motion that's included in the packet to make it abundantly clear. So, therefore, I move to approve the attached resolution with the following amendment that amends the now therefore where be it resolved to read as follows. Now therefore be it resolved by the Township Board of the Charter Township of Meridian, Ingham County, Michigan, that Meridian Township shall earmark the 2022 Community Services Millage solely for the benefit of the Senior Center, Community Resources Fund, and Recreation. That's the end of the amended language. So I move to approve the attached resolution as amended, as I just mentioned, that the 2022 Community Service Millage is earmarked solely for the benefit of the Senior Center, Community Resources Fund, and Recreation.
Support.
Supported by Clerk Guthrie. Do you have further comments to add?
No, I think this is largely a symbolic gesture that the board is making to assure the public, as Manager Walsh mentioned, that we have no intention of moving money from a millage that was passed by and large by the voting population here in Meridian Township, with the understanding that that money would be spent on these three things, and that a technical recommendation by our lawyers will not stand in the way of us doing that.
Okay. Clerk Guthrie?
Sure. Thank you. Yeah, I just want to thank our community member, Ed Gillespie, for raising this and for the township staff and putting this together to button this up to show what the true intent of the millage language is.
Okay. Mr. Lemaster, I believe we need a roll call vote for this motion.
Sure. Supervisor Jackson?
Yes.
Clerk Guthrie?
Yes.
Treasurer DeShane?
Yes.
Trustee Hendrickson?
Yes.
Trustee Wilson?
Yes.
Motion carried 5-0.
Thank you. Item 13D, credit card policy and elimination of petty cash. Mr. Walsh.
Thank you, Madam Supervisor, members of the board. Before I call up on Director Garber, I just want to say that something that we have been working on over several years is to clean up our credit card policy procedure. And for 2 or 3 years, our auditors have talked to us about petty cash, and we've been cleaning that up. But in the short time that Director Garber has been here, which I believe he started, I think it was July 12th, we've made great progress. And tonight's a big step forward, as the director is going to talk to you about cleaning up our entire credit card policy. And I'm really pleased to see this on the agenda tonight and the action before you. So Director Garber.
Thank you. So as detailed in the packet, I have attached an updated credit card policy, kind of a best practices guidance document. The changes that we're seeking to establish with these are a reduction in the number of authorized employees who can be issued a township credit card, a reduction in the total combined authorized credit limit of the credit cards issued by the township, reduction in the number of purchases made with the township credit cards, a reduction in the amount of time between the purchase and when the receipt should be turned in to the township. In addition to providing a detailed receipt for each purchase, a brief description of the official business reason for the purchase will also be required. an establishment of a quarterly internal audit for credit card purchases. And then also in addition to this, adding in the elimination of petty cash funds. Happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Let me just ask, are we looking for a decision on this policy change tonight?
It's up for discussion tonight.
Okay.
And there is a motion.
Okay, thank you. Mr. DeShane.
As an employee with a township issued credit card, I welcome these changes, and also as being the department that counts petty cash twice a day, I'm glad to hear we're getting rid of petty cash. Changes were made years ago to reduce the amount of petty cash that's actually distributed. We don't do much petty cash now. It will not have a big impact on our township employees because of the changes that are already made. I do want to say, while I welcome these changes, and I think the online form and the more clearly stated purpose of the credit card purchase is to have that explicitly stated to begin with is a good idea. I want to also say that credit cards are not treated loosely in the township today. If a credit card purchase is made, you are asked for that receipt almost immediately. And if you don't get it, you'll be asked a few hours later and the next morning, the next day, until that receipt is provided for. We do have safeguards now. We are monitoring our credit cards. We can do better, and I think it can be easier with fewer credit cards issued. But I don't want the public to get the idea that we are fast and loose with credit cards today. We're not. Every credit card transaction is accounted for and receipt is required. But thank you for bringing this before the board, and I welcome this change, particularly the elimination of petty cash completely.
Other comments? Trustee Wilson.
I also applaud you on taking this step to tighten down on the use of credit cards and which individuals need them and don't need them. I've just witnessed in one department someone who really didn't need a credit card but had one assigned, and now that's being pulled back. So this to me is very sound fiscal policy, and I welcome seeing this change. Thank you.
Anyone else? I think I kind of missed in the preparation to this that the fact that several of our audits have recommended these kinds of moves in the township to tighten up our checks and balances. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So what has changed is that you came in and apparently said this needs to be done and I'll take care of it.
Correct.
Thank you. All right, any other comments, questions? So we can presume to see this in our next, probably our next meeting for a decision?
Yes.
Adoption? Thank you very much.
Yep, you're welcome.
And item 13E is the RRA, One Family Suburban State District Deletion. Mr. Schmidt. Director
Madam
Schmidt.
Supervisor, consistent with the 2017 comprehensive plan, staff has been continuing to review the existing zoning districts for opportunities to streamline our ordinance. This is the second one we've brought forward. The first one was simply a deletion because it was a district that was unused in the township. This district is actually used on 7 parcels. And so there's actually 2 parts to this proposal. One would be the deletion of the RRA district from the zoning ordinance. The second would be the rezoning of those 7 parcels to a new zoning district. What we are recommending is to rezone those parcels to RA, one family medium density residential. That brings 5 of them further into compliance with the ordinance for lot size, 2 for parcel width, which would help them in the future if they so chose to ever make an addition to the house or reconstruct the house or anything of that nature. 6 of the parcels are on Van Atta, directly to the north of the Winslow Mobile Home Park. The 7th parcel is on Ethel Street, just off Cornell. Planning Commission did review this a couple times over summer and fall and recommended approval of this change that Senior Planner Shorkey has walked through the process. So I'd be happy to answer any questions. I will tell you that we are continuing to look at the potential changes in the zoning ordinance, but they get much more difficult after this. And so we're going to take some time trying to figure out how to tackle the next one. But this is the last easy one, I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. Trustee Wilson.
Were the neighbors, the individuals owning these parcels, notified of this potential change?
I have to give Senior Planner Shorkey all the credit in the world here. He actually tried to make personal contact with every single one of them, not just by sending them a letter. I think he knocked on a couple of doors, made a few phone calls. He did everything he could to reach them. I think we got 5 of the 6, and told them that this won't functionally this will change nothing. It won't affect your taxes. It won't create development. It won't do anything. It'll actually help you if you ever wanted to do something in the future.
Great, thank you.
Mr. Hendrickson.
So I'm looking through the parcel information that you've listed in the packet here, and it appears as though based on the 80 feet of lot width for the for the RA zoning, where these are prospectively going to, that 3 of the 7 would be in compliance with that. Is that accurate?
Yes, this would bring 3 of the 7 into compliance.
Okay, and for the minimum 10,000, that would cover 6 of the 7.
Yeah, that one lot, there's not a whole lot we can do. It's a very small lot that was created a long time ago.
So just as an informational point to the folks that I'm sure Senior Planner Shorkey did his best to reach out to, it's not that these will necessarily be conforming parcels, the remaining 4 of 7. It's that they will be less non-conforming. Is that an accurate way of putting it?
Yes, the goal for they're all existing non-conforming lots, which, although we don't have surveys, I can tell you that they're probably also, that means they're existing non-conforming structures, because they don't meet setbacks. What this does is bring them closer to conformance, so that there are circumstances now where they could add on without having to ask for a variance under certain circumstances.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? I don't have a question of my own. Thank you very much. We will see this, I presume, in the next packet.
We will have them, and they will be back for introduction. Just a reminder, it will be 2, not just 1.
2. Okay.
Thank you.
One more question. You talked about the other work you have to do in cleaning up the zoning ordinances. Are there other zoning districts that might be eliminated?
I think there's always a potential for that. I mean, we've done an analysis on all the single-family districts. Eliminating another single-family district becomes a very broad policy discussion, and there's certainly a conversation to be had there, but I think right now our focus is going to switch to finalizing the sign ordinance, finishing the supplemental regulations, which we've been working on for some time, the marijuana discussion that was directed towards us, and the comprehensive plan update.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Item 14, comments from the public. I have an additional green card from Joan Worsba. Yes, please.
Again, my name is Joan Worsba, and I live at 1268 Harbor Cut in Okemos. And I've been a resident of Okemos for about 40 years. I read the newspaper this morning, and I was quite concerned because it says Supervisor Patricia Jackson thinks that the township could be opening a residential marijuana business before the end of the year. And it's turning into a government process, and there's a lot of concerns that I have had. As you know, I'm sure you know that the marijuana dispensary, the selling of marijuana for recreational purposes was just won by 6 votes, which makes half the people in the township not quite happy to have dispensaries. And I think we also have a lot of concerns One of my biggest concerns is where these facilities are going to be. There's going to be one which is said in the paper off of Hagedorn Road, south of Mount Hope. And I'm also very concerned about the product itself. Like they're talking about the amount of THC, which is now in the marijuana products. And in the past, if I remember right, in between the 60s and the 70s, and it was like 2 to 5%, and now it's up to 15 and possibly 50 or 90%. I looked this up today in good old Google, and they said now some of the products contain up to 50 to 90% that are edible. And I was wondering who's going to be regulating these things. I'm very concerned about especially the young people, and I've raised my children and they went to the Okemos schools, and I was very concerned about the use of different drugs in the schools, and I know there was a problem even 25 years ago when my kids were in school. And I really feel there should be a strong education for the parents, for the students, and the people generally in the area about the use of marijuana. As I said, you know, the amount has been increased considerably, and it's not regulated. The other thing I find very disturbing is the advertisement of marijuana. You go down the freeway, you see tons of billboards advertising the dispensaries. You go in East Lansing, you see I see several major signs, and I find that very upsetting because it's a big promotion of the use of marijuana. And who's regulating this? Who's in charge of saying we can have? Am I going beyond?
Please finish.
Go ahead, finish.
Continue.
Okay.
To the end.
Who's saying we can have these large signs in public for the encouragement of this use? This is a concern of mine. And the other thing is, like, we drove to Holland, Michigan to go visit our son who was camping out there, and it's amazing how many large greenhouses that are producing marijuana. Are we going to allow that in our township? I'm concerned about that. Do we want more? Do we want these large? I said, what's growing in there? And my husband says, there's marijuana growing in there. Do we want to promote this? Yeah, I mean, there's statistics saying, I can read this from my phone or whatever, that the more people use marijuana, and the higher THC amounts, that there's increased heart rate, high blood pressure, respiratory problems, hallucinations, disorientations, increase of appetite, brain damage, and also the potential for when young people are starting to do this in an earlier age, their brain development, their motivation is destroyed or reduced. In pregnant women, there's harm to the babies that are in gestation. There's more stillbirths or preterm births, and there's also developmental issues. And some of these women who've had the babies taking a lot of marijuana, smoking a lot, or taking however they consume it, their children have higher aggressive behavior disorders and ADHD. I can't remember. Their learning skills are much poorer. Now, what kind of society are we going to be creating? That's what I'm concerned, and that's why I'm just asking for 4 things. That we can somehow control the amount of THC in the products. We can educate our especially the students and community members about marijuana, and we restrict the signs of advertising for marijuana. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there others who would like to speak to the board at this time? Seeing none, we move on to item 15, other matters and board member comments. Trustee Hendrickson.
Thank you, Madam Supervisor. I'd ask, because I did a very bad job of reminding the board about the retreat, if Treasurer Duchesne could give us just a quick scheduling update as to that, I'd appreciate it.
I would be glad to. This Saturday will be our annual board member retreat, first one in person in 3 years. It will be at 9 a.m. at the fire station community room, and will go until 3 p.m. So 9 until 3. Lunch will be provided, and our facilitator will be Larry Merrill, who's been facilitated 2 other retreats for us. So 9 to 3 at the fire station, and because it is a meeting of the board, the public is invited to view the event and make public comment, but obviously not participate in the event. So 9 to 3 on Saturday, the 22nd.
Thank you. Other comments, reminders?
I do have a comment as well. I would like to thank the manager for these really awesome gift for Happy Bosses Day. I've been on the board for 7 years, and this is the first year, and thank you very much. This is very kind of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Orr.
The last petty cash.
The last of the petty cash. Okay. If there are no other comments, then I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Support.
Moved and supported. All in favor, say yes.
Yes.
Opposed, no. We are adjourned.